Hey Tribe, here is a public service announcement in light of a spate of Instagram accounts being hacked. And as a marketing technologist, I want to share with you 8 tips and best practices to keep your social media accounts safe and to keep your passwords safe. And so that you don't have to deal with the inevitable nightmare that follows when one of your social media accounts get hacked. Now, I don't have any exact knowledge of what happened in those cases that everyone is talking about these days, but I think it's safe to say that it is an absolute nightmare when you have to deal with the fallout from one of your accounts getting hacked. Not only the impact on your reputation, but also obviously the time and energy that it takes to address the situation. Secondly, you lose an entire media channel that's now not available to help you get your message out. And third, the time and money and resources that you now need to spend to rebuild a channel from scratch. And so for all these reasons, an ounce of prevention is definitely worth a pound of cure. In this case, maybe worth 1,000 pounds of cure. But working with integrative medicine practitioners, I oftentimes find that even though they know this is important, they're not doing it. Inertia takes over and one day becomes someday. And I can tell you, I have clients where 5 years later, I can still use the same password to get into their social media account. So don't be that person, okay? Now, if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, be sure to click the subscribe button and then hit the bell to be notified every time a new video goes live, typically on Tuesdays. Let's get into the 8 tips, and be sure to stay till the end because in the last 2 tips I share 2 softwares that make the first 6 steps a lot easier to implement and a lot easier to manage. So tip number 1 is to limit the number of people that have access to your password. So, especially if you haven't changed your passwords in a long time, you have handed it out to web developers, web designers, social media agencies, there's a large number of people that have access to your password. So you want to make sure that you review this list, and the easiest way to actually ensure that only the people that need access have access to it is to simply change your password, and then the people that need access will contact you and saying, hey, I can't get into your social media account, and then you can give them the new password on a case-by-case basis. So tip number 2 is to pick better answers to your security questions. So in the case of Jillian Johnson, it wasn't actually that her password got compromised, but instead it was a result of social engineering, where hackers looked at all her social media content and guessed the answers to her security questions. So you don't have to answer truthfully who your first boyfriend was, what your favorite pizza topping is, or what your favorite car is, right? You can make up answers. So if the security question is, what is your favorite pizza topping, then don't pick a food item, pick something else. Pick something among your friends, a name or anything else that you can write down and that you remember, but it's not the real answer. So tip number 3 is to pick more complicated passwords. So don't pick very easy to guess passwords is another way of saying this, and a lot of people are just, because they have a hard time remembering what their passwords is, they make it very easy to remember. And so this is when we get to step 7 and 8, there's actually software out there to make your life easier so that you can have the luxury of picking more complicated passwords. And certainly a number of sites require that as well. You have to have capitalization, a number, and an extra character in there. But even with that, a lot of people make it very easy to pick. And so again, you want to ensure that you pick something that's really complicated. So tip number 4 is to change your passwords regularly, ideally every 90 days. Some applications actually force you to change your password to include a capital letter, a number, and an extra character, and you have to change it every 90 days. But you should really apply this to every site, no matter if the site forces you to change the passwords. Now, tip number 5 is to pick unique passwords for each website. So again, this is really probably the biggest mistake that most practitioners make, that they use the same password for every site, from your banking sites to your social media sites to your email login, etc. And yes, it's convenient because that's the one password you want to remember. But again, it makes it very easy. If one site gets hacked, suddenly all your sites become vulnerable. And a case where maybe only your Instagram account got hacked is annoying and a nightmare on its own. But imagine if not only Instagram but Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, your email, everything gets compromised, and then it is a real nightmare. And so again, to prevent that from happening, make sure that you have different passwords for each site. And again, if you use a password management app, then that's very easy to manage. Alright, so let's get to tip number 6, and that is to always transmit your password securely. And here's what I mean by that. Oftentimes when you are working with third-party providers that need access to one of your accounts, you are sending them your password. And so what I don't want you to do is to just email it to them, which could be intercepted, etc. So the better way is to actually use a password management app that I will be discussing in tip number 7. And that allows you to share the password in a manner that is secure and in a way that they don't even know what the password is. So they are able to access your accounts, but they can't actually know what the password is, and that again provides an additional level of security for you and your team. Which brings me to step number 7, which is to use a password management app, and there's a number of them out there. I've personally tried 1Password, and we're now with LastPass, and LastPass is used by really a large number of organizations. It manages all your passwords securely in the cloud. You also have a local version on your computer, and it requires a master password, and that is definitely the password that you don't write down anywhere, that you really have to remember. But from there, essentially on a side-by-side basis, you can now have the application store the passwords. And again, the beautiful thing about a password management app is that it makes team environments very easy to set up. So let's say you have a social media agency working on your behalf. You can share the password through something like LastPass with them, but they can't see the actual password. They can log into your social media account, but they can't enter the password or copy paste the password into that, because the password is encrypted. And so again, that prevents somebody from maliciously changing your passwords in the application, because when you're on Instagram, for instance, before you can actually change the password, it asks you enter your passwords, and again, you can't paste that in from something like LastPass because the person doesn't know what it is, and so that way they can't even proceed with the process of changing your passwords and locking you out from your account. Below this video, I have a number of recommendations around password management apps for you to check out. Again, LastPass is the one that we're using for our clients and for our own operations. So we've been using this for several years, and I know a lot of other health practitioners are using that as well. And then finally, tip number 8 is to use double authentication. And what that means is that every time you log in, you will get a notification on another device with a certain number that you have to enter in order to get into the site. And so somebody would have to have access both to your information and your smartphone in order to get into your account. And again, the application that we are using is called Authenticator, that you can connect to any number of applications. And so you can go into your Facebook account, into your Instagram account, etc., and turn on double authentication, and that really adds a whole nother layer of security to your social media accounts and your password. And again, you can do this not only on social media sites, but also for Google, for your email programs, etc., to really keep your data secure. So to recap, make sure that you take password security seriously, and you'll thank me later. Be sure to use a password management app like LastPass. Be sure to turn on double authentication and use an app like Authenticator, and that will drastically reduce the risk of your social media accounts getting hacked and preventing you from having to deal with the fallout from anything getting hacked. So I hope this was helpful. Be sure to like, comment, or share this video, and tag a friend or colleague that needs to hear this as well, and I'll see you in the next video.